Hello, it's Gonzalo Bonilla from Portrait, and I'm here with Caroline Virgil from BRiN. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation.
My pleasure.
So what can you tell us about BRiN? What is the business about?
So BRiN is the world's first artificial intelligent business advisor, and it's a mobile app, so you can download it onto Android or iPhone. And we produce TV quality business training for small, medium-sized businesses right across the globe. So we have at the moment, over 35,000 users across 88 countries. And so it's like having a business advisor in your pocket.
So it's an artificial intelligence?
It is artificial intelligence, yes. We use artificial intelligence as a way that BRiN can talk to you and ask you questions and get an understanding of challenges you're having, and then give you answers and or recommend videos that you can watch to help you with that problem.
And everything is personalized and customized for each business. Right?
Yes, absolutely. Well, for each user even. So if you've got multiple people in a business, it would be specific to that individual user what they needed to know.
That sounds so interesting.
Thank you.
And what do you consider are the key success factors for BRiN?
The key success factors for us is that, we have a goal that we want to reach 1 million business owners around the world. The reason why we want to do that is because we honestly believe, and it's a core of why we do what we do, is that if you help a business owner, you help a community, because you're providing jobs in that community, and then they will obviously have reach out then to that community. So, so many, I'm not sure if you know the stats around it, but 50 million businesses go under every year. And we would really like to try and help reverse that trend, because, when businesses go under, it impacts more than the business owner. It impacts the employees, it impacts the suppliers, it impacts the clients. So, if you can help businesses stay on their feet and flourish, then, it's good for trade everywhere.
And how old is BRiN?
We're 2 years.
2 years.
2 years old. So we launched May last year, 2016. However, obviously we were building before then, but so it's 2 years now.
And do you have a goal to achieving the million of users?
Oh, you mean when we would like to?
Yeah.
So within the next year, we'd like to reach 1 million users, yes.
And you think it's going really good, right?
Yeah, so at the moment we get about 100 and 150 new users a day. So, and every time we come out with new features for BRiN, we do get another big surge in users, because the more powerful she becomes, then obviously the more interest people have in using her.
And how do you advertise, or which media you use to?
Predominantly social media. Word of mouth is a big one for us, and we also have been very successful in our PR. So we've got over 100 articles written about us, where our CEO, Dale Beaumont, has been interviewed on podcasts or by newspapers and magazines all over the world. So, including things like Huffington Post and Forbes and things like that. So obviously that really helps get the word out.
Fantastic.
Yes.
So we know that you went to Web Summit in Lisbon, Portugal.
Yes.
So first of all, how do you know about this event?
To be honest, I found out about Web Summit on social media, and so I read that it was one of the biggest IT conferences in the world, technology conferences. So I then did some further investigation about that, and so.
So was by yourself? You don't receive any invitation or nothing, just?
I don't believe so. I think I approached them. Yes, I found out about it, read about it, read up on about Web Summit, how many years they had been running, who their previous speakers were, found out what other companies. There's a lot written about Web Summit, so it's quite easy to find the information. And then realised it was a really good conference, good quality conference. So
you think that Web Summit can help you to improve or have new experience for BRiN?
Most definitely. And I think, the thing for us is when we decide on any conference that we go to, you sort of need to have clear objectives of why you would even go to that conference. And for us, going to Web Summit was about increasing our exposure into Europe, because we hadn't had a lot of exposure in Europe, and because it was the first time that it was going to be in Lisbon, in Portugal. We sort of thought, well, this is a really great platform for us to launch BRiN into Europe. And then secondly, we wanted to see what other technology is out there. I mean, we're researching technology all the time, but not everything is publicised. And so we just felt that if we could meet as many people as we can, see what other companies are doing, see what other startups are doing, seeing if there's companies out there that could help BRiN or we could help them, then it's a great platform to do that, because you're there for a short period of time in a very condensed environment where everyone, like there's tens of thousands of people in one space, right? So you could, really engage with a lot of people in a short space of time.
And have you been to Portugal before Web Summit?
No, I hadn't. So it was a new experience to go there. And I have to admit, initially it was like, why is it in Portugal? That definitely question crossed my mind. However, when I got there and saw the startup community, it completely made sense to me why Web Summit was there.
So you think that the place Portugal was a really an interesting factor for you to go to the event? Or, I mean, if they changed to Germany, would you still going?
Look, I think, if they moved, you would always look at the merits of that country and what you need to do there. I think, though, now that I'm very much aware of the startup community in Portugal, it definitely encourages us to go there again and again. Yes, because of that startup community.
So it was a good decision of the event to change to Portugal.
For us, it was. I think so. Anytime you're going from Australia to any event overseas, it's a long way. And so obviously going to Portugal is that little bit closer than Ireland, which is where it was initially. But also I think because it was in Portugal, I think you can get a far greater global audience as well. So not only do you get obviously a lot of interest from Europe, but there are a lot of people there from Asia and USA and Canada. And really it was, I'm not sure the stats on how many countries were there, but it was a lot. They had huge exposure.
So, or you already told us something about why did you attend to Web Summit?
Mm-hmm.
So, what were your thoughts or learnings from Web Summit?
Look, more than I expected. So first of all, we had a stand. We had a stand at Web Summit on one of the days, and so literally from sort of 9 o'clock in the morning till 6 o'clock in the evening, it was non-stop for us. And so we had investors, other technology companies, a lot of students from Portugal that were studying in the technology space coming and speaking to us. And when we were at that stand, there was a lot of great confirmation that the product was well accepted and that people loved it and saw the value of it. And we had people that came up to us that had been using BRiN for some time, and so it was great to get that feedback. There was also a lot of interest from venture capitalists that we would never have had exposure to if we hadn't been there before. And then also some big player companies that, almost like the dream companies that you would want to be associated with were there. And then they come up and talk to you as well. So, there's definitely a lot of exposure. On the days that we weren't at the stand, we then were of course then able to go around and look at all the other stands, and we made connections with probably about 20-30 companies that we engaged with very strongly, and many of those companies that we're still in engagement with. Some of those companies, we use them as part of our product now. So those sort of connections wouldn't have happened. I probably would never have discovered those companies if I hadn't been to Web Summit. They also have education sessions as well, where they have speakers, and they were fantastic because obviously the startup community is really big in Portugal. There was a lot of presentations around startups, and I found that information to be invaluable. So that's another great reason to go.
So do you think it was a great decision to go to Web Summit?
Definitely for us, it was a great decision to go.
Will you do it again other years?
Yes, most definitely. I don't believe we'll get there this year. We're probably looking at every other year, but there's definitely tremendous benefit in going. It is a huge event, so it's one of those things that you have to know why you're going, and if you know why you're going, then it's a good event to go to, because otherwise it can be a bit overwhelming because you think, oh, how am I going to meet all these people? But if you know why you're going and what it is you want to get out of it, then you can focus on those companies that you want to engage with.
So what do you think about Lisbon and the startup community that is growing there?
I've traveled a lot, though I had never been to Lisbon before, and I would have to say it's one of the most beautiful cities I have ever been to. It's historical, it's got incredible buildings, the food and wine is spectacular. It's a very affordable city to travel to. People are just so friendly, and I would have to say it is certainly one of the most enjoyable cities I've ever travelled to. In terms of the startup community, that really did catch me by surprise. I really had no idea about the depth of the startup community there. It's a very strong community, very vibrant, very supportive. I would say, probably at least 30-40% of the people I met that came to our stand were people that had startups within. And what I found really interesting about the startups that I met, really forward thinking. Some of the products that are coming out of Portugal, things that they're looking at, particularly in the space of artificial intelligence, they're not doing anywhere else yet. So, they're very forward thinking and innovative companies that are popping up in Portugal.
So with your experience, what can Australian learn from Portugal and vice versa?
I think that, the startup community in Australia, I would say, isn't as strong. So for people that are involved in the startup community and have an interest here in Australia to develop the startup community, I think they could learn a lot from how they're doing it in Portugal. And, it's certainly worth their while to go and visit and see how the startup community is working there. In terms of doing business, well, it is one of the gateways to Europe. And, certainly for many Australians, English is obviously their first language and sometimes their only language, but I didn't find that a barrier in Portugal. Everyone pretty much speaks English. So that's really helpful if you're trying to launch your product into Europe and engage with people there. And I just think that, if there's a destination in Europe as a English-only speaker, it's a great place to go.
So you see a potential for Portugal for small business?
Most definitely. Not only in terms of technology companies that are there that may support your businesses here in Australia, but also just to see how dynamic and innovative they are. Yeah.
Okay. Do you think that there are opportunities for Australian businesses in Portugal, or taking Portugal as a launching point now that the UK is going out from the European Union?
Most definitely. It's certainly what I observed, like when you fly into Lisbon, it's really easy to get anywhere else in Europe that you may need to go. So, if you went there and you engaged with the companies there, and it's actually really like once you've been there, but I think now, even if I hadn't been there but understood that these opportunities were available there, you can do your research before you go and find out about what companies are there. There's lots of, as I said, particularly, but not only in the artificial intelligence space, across many different modalities within the IT technology space. And you could really develop and have access to some great technology for your company that you may not have been able to have access to before. So certainly if you did your research and started engagement with some of these companies before you went, and then go there and, catch up with 3, 4, 5 of them as you need, or tie that in with Web Summit. Web Summit's later this year. It runs every year. So, do it together, maybe go a little bit early. That's what I did. We went a couple of days early, one because of jet lag, because it's a long way to go. But also we actually had lined up about 10 meetings before we went to Web Summit with people that were going to be at Web Summit. But it just meant that by starting that conversation with them before Web Summit actually started, then at Web Summit we caught up another 2, 3, 4 times. So it means you're really taking advantage of your time there and really being able to get a lot further down the track in your conversations with these companies.
Will you do business with Portugal in the future? I know that BRiN is an app.
Yes.
So, you don't need to have a physical office in Portugal, but do you think that Europe and Portugal is a potential for your business?
Absolutely. Where we obviously have users, well, at the moment we have users across over 88 countries around the world, and we're quite heavily featured in Europe and in particular Portugal, because obviously when you go there and you have exposure there, you get a lot of users there at the time. And yes, you're right, even though we may not physically set up an office in Portugal, we're still in conversations with company in Portugal that we met there before. So there's certainly opportunities there for us, for companies that we could be working with when we're looking at future features for BRiN down the track. So yeah, I definitely think we'll continue that engagement.
And well, finally, do you have any recommendations for Australian companies in using Web Summit as a platform to do business in Portugal?
Definitely. I think, often in Australia we can be a little bit isolated in terms of what's going on in the rest of the world and being able to engage. And I think for a couple of reasons it's great to use Web Summit as a platform for yourselves. If you want to expose yourself to the European market and get feedback and look at opportunities there, definitely it's worthwhile to go to Web Summit. If you're looking at companies that might be great to partner with, whether you want to expand your technology team or expand the features of your product, then yes, again, I think Web Summit is a great place to go to, because not only will you be exposed to thousands of companies from Europe, but also the rest of the world. Web Summit is the biggest technology conference in the world. So, it's, if you're in that space or your business uses technology, then it's a great platform to go to for your company.
So thank you very much, Caroline, for sharing your great experience with us and of Web Summit. So this will give you an extraordinary view about BRiN and how its success and the potential that they have for Portugal and around the world. And just keep in touch, and we'll have other interviews with some companies. Thank you very much.